Okay, so I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but I kept putting it off and never getting around to it. And basically, I want to talk a little bit about U.S. politics and some of my thoughts on it. And I'm just sitting in the park right now in a quiet corner. I was going to make a script and make this all organized and well laid out, but again, I never got around to it, never felt like actually doing it. So I think I'm going to just do what I'm doing now and just have no script and just wildly, randomly rant and try to keep some kind of coherent structure to what I'm saying. Unfortunately, it probably means I'm going to leave out and forget a bunch of things that I thought I would want to say, because I never wrote any of this down. But whatever, we'll do our best. So yeah, I want to talk about politics, U.S. politics in particular, and I guess I should also say that none of this is like new thoughts to me, or I didn't have any kind of epiphany. I've never really put my thoughts into a video, or I guess audio, any kind of recording before. And so, I'm approaching my 40s pretty quickly here, frightening as that is to say. So none of these thoughts are new to me, and none of these thoughts I'm having are original, as in countless millions and billions of people have already had them before me. So I'm not saying anything original. I'm just kind of voicing my opinion. But the reason I'm doing it now is because, well, we have this 2024 election coming up, and it is shaping up to be an absolute shit show. It's funny how somehow it feels like the bar just keeps getting lower. I've seen a handful of elections, and there have been some bad ones, and somehow none of the ones in the past seem to compare to how stupid and bad things are currently. So I'm going to see if I can hit some of my key points with regard to that. Well, I sure hope the audio comes out okay, because I'm just talking into my phone upside down here. So I guess a quick background on me is my family and myself are pretty much entirely heavily, please don't ruin my recording. Okay, I'm going to shroud the microphone, see if that helps with my hand. My family, we've always been Democratic, as in of the two parties, we tend to view more, we tend to have a lot more policy, we like the policies of the Democrats, generally speaking, a lot more. And I'm the same way, largely. There's a few things I maybe lean a little bit more conservative on, but largely I'm I guess liberal or progressive or democratic. I know those don't mean the same thing, but I'm sort of using it interchangeably to mean the same thing. Also, I think I will say that what's good when you're thinking about these things, about, I guess, politics is kind of a loaded term, just about important issues, is I think it's good to have a balanced view, and sometimes there is value in conservative thinking, and okay, let's unshroud here, and sometimes there's definitely values in progressive thinking, and it's not that one's always better than the other, and it's important to seriously weigh the pros and cons of both, and not just outright dismiss anything. But whatever, I'm completely off the point here. So anyway, that's my background. What do I want to say next? I want to say that what's about to happen here, as it looks now, is an absolute disaster. And you know what? This audio is going to be even a little longer, because a couple days ago, we had that this presidential debate. So what is right now? Right now is June 29. So last Thursday, was it? We had this absolute disastrous debate. So here's the crux of it, right? I really don't like the choices, and it's not just me, it's a lot of people in this country are really displeased with there being another election between Biden and Trump, and these choices just suck. So it's crazy to me. I don't have any statistics or whatever, but I'm sure you can look them up, and if you can at least somewhat believe them, and they seem very believable in the sense that most people do not want to see Trump or Biden in there, because there's so many issues with both of them, and it looks like that's what we're going to get, which to me just looks like a very blatant, the system is failing, right? Because we're ending up with things that most people don't want, and those are your choices. That is terrible. So generally, most of the time when I have voted, I feel like I have been doing what's called strategic voting. I wonder how loudly the cars on the freeway are coming through on this mic. Unfortunately, it feels like almost impossible unless you go deep into the woods in the country. It's like impossible to get away from the sound of some kind of rotary machines. And unfortunately, I'm quite close to the freeway. Anyway, whoa, completely off the path here. So strategic voting is basically when you're not necessarily voting for somebody you like or feel good about. It's when you're voting for someone strategically so that someone else doesn't get office, right? So it's like picking the lesser of two evils. Like, both of these options suck, so I guess I'll pick the one that sucks a little bit less to hopefully keep the guy that's super terrible from getting in power, you know? And that just feels so incredibly bad. Like, that feels like such a failure. And I guess what I want to say, as far as, like, the flaws run deep, hundreds of years deep, you could say. So this isn't something new. This isn't something that pertains to this election or to quote-unquote modern times, however you want to say that, however you want to call them. It's about the system basically being set up to where... Okay, I had to pause a little bit because some people were around and I don't want to sound like a weirdo sitting there talking to a phone. And right, so I was saying that the system itself is kind of bad, and there's a lot of ways you could dissect that. But basically, we have it to where the winner of an election wins everything, even if they win by a tiny margin, you know? So if the split is 51% to 49%, then the 51% wins and takes it all and wins everything, you know? And that sets up a situation where potentially an awful lot of the people that are trying to get represented do not feel adequately represented. And also, even if you start with potentially a lot of different parties or representatives or whatever, over time, repeating these kinds of votes that are winner takes all, basically ends up with, inevitably at the end, you end up with two parties that kind of go back and forth and swing back and forth like a pendulum, which is what we have currently, right? We have the Democrats and the Republicans. And whatever version of that they were called before, they like swapped names a little bit in the past. But essentially, it's the continuation of the same parties we had before. That's really bad. That's a way to get not a great representation. And I always feel like I'm not very well represented. Like, yes, I'm a Democrat because I have to. Because of the two choices, I am definitely a Democrat if those are my only options. But really, I'm not saying there should be a candidate that completely represents everything about me, because that's never going to happen. But at least, someone I feel good about voting for. But it's never like that. Almost never. It's pretty much always I'm voting strategically, and that feels bad. It feels so unsatisfying, particularly when both of the candidates are so unfit, basically unfit. I should also say that if you want to learn stuff about this, there are some videos. And they've been around for a long time. There's a series of videos about like voting and systems and stuff like that by, I think he's called CGP Grey on YouTube. Really good, really like easy to digest and fun little animations and stuff. So that's kind of what I'm referencing a lot when I'm talking about these voting systems breaking down and being poor representations. And of course, there's all kinds of alternative voting systems that certain other maybe municipalities or countries or just places use. And I'm gonna fail to think of the name of any of them, but like basically where you have like multiple. Well, first of all, you have like runoff votes that are built into the voting, and then there's other systems that kind of form like a representative, like a coalition, coalition governments, which doesn't mean that one side wins all. It means you have to have like a combination that somewhat represents the will of the people and what they voted for. And I'm sure there's no perfect government. I'm sure all of these different variations have many of their own flaws, right? Like everything has flaws and positives, but I feel like, what we have is pretty terrible, because what ends up happening is whenever some establishment, how do we word this? Whenever something becomes established, like a party or a company or a church or whatever. It applies to literally anything. Whenever something is in power and established, and it becomes powerful, the important strong force or whatever, it's going to do whatever it takes to stay in that power, whether or not it's for the the greater good or not. I mean, I'm sure there's some rare exceptions to this, and I know I'm being kind of vague, but hopefully that makes sense. So like right now, politically speaking, we have the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and they're doing so many calculations, with any contest, with any decision they make about. And I guess that is politics, but they're like figuring out what to do in their next step. And they're not just considering like, well, what's best for the country or what do we stand for? It becomes like, again, a strategic battle where it's one against the other. And what do we do to stay in power? And specifically for American politics, our Democrats and our Republicans aren't like that different. Like from looking from inside here, yes, they seem different, but like our Democrats are not particularly liberal. I guess you would say. It's almost just like slightly conservative and significantly conservative, I guess you would say, if you were to like map it out on a chart compared to the wide spectrum of political views that you have around the world. So they're very similar, and there's ways, without like getting conspiracy theory-ish, but there's ways you can sort of break the logic down where they sort of can help keep each other in power, and it's kind of in their interest to maybe continue for things to be how they are, like versus, let's say, an alternative where there'd be some kind of drastic political change, and I mean, you don't have to get into the details of how that would be. That is, but the thing is that they hold on to their power so hard that it would probably take some kind of insane like civil war almost or something, right? But that's not important. The point is they would rather keep this between those two parties rather than risk something, something completely new, even if that new thing is, let's say it's kind of aligns with the Democrats or more or less aligns with the Republicans. They're not going to do that because they already have power, and any establishment that has power is going to do whatever it can to keep power, right? So again, this is kind of a random example, but like, the oil industries, they became massively powerful, over the last 100 years or whatever. Even though modernly we know like, oil is bad and it's pollution and environmental damage and whatever else. Yeah, they're not going to, they're going to drag out what they have going for them as long as they possibly can, to everyone's detriment, because they're going to just want to keep holding on to their power and being in a position where they have a lot of money and yada yada, everything that goes with power. Okay, so I feel like I'm getting extremely ranty and away from the main point. Well, I don't know what the main point is. The main point is the situation sucks. So I guess let me just talk about these two candidates. We got Biden and we got Trump. And so I felt like I had some idea of what I wanted to say, but that was before this debate on Thursday a couple days ago. And now I guess what I want to say is very slightly changed. But basically, Biden's biggest problem is he's too damn old. And it's not necessarily that age as a number is the problem, but he is, you can very clearly see, and it's been increasing over the years, that he mumbles, he's incoherent, he looks old, he's like, barely walking sometimes. And of course, alternatively, sometimes he seems quite energetic and, in reasonable shape for a 80-something-year-old. So it's not that age is an issue as a number. Like, I'm sure there are some people that are close to 90 years old and they're in much better shape than he is. But the point is that he's unfit. And my God, was that demonstrated like you would not believe in this last debate. Like, it was insane. It was like frightening and embarrassing at the same time. And so I wouldn't, this is kind of a abstraction, but like I wouldn't be opposed necessarily for there to be some kind of limits incurred. Although you could argue that it's not necessary. If people just kind of use their heads and be like, no, this is inappropriate. We're not gonna put in a senile guy into an office or whatever. Then no restrictions are necessary. But I wouldn't strictly be opposed to having there be like an upper age limit to certain positions. Like for president, maybe that upper age limit should be 70 or maybe even 65. And again, this isn't just a matter of like senility. It's also a matter of when someone is old, they become less and less in touch, right? Like they're almost inherently more out of touch with the situation of the modern world and the problems and whatnot. And not entirely, right? Because on the other hand, the older you get, the more wisdom you collect, and in many ways that's true, and there's a lot of value in that. But you also have like blind spots. And I mean, again, I'm not 40 years old yet, soon enough, a couple years, but I play video games online competitively and stuff, so I'm around younger people quite a bit in voice chat, like my teammates and stuff, and I can already tell that, like, and I have been able to tell for a long time that it's difficult for me to sort of find a lot of common ground with them outside of like the game and what we do, because we're just different generations. We have different I don't know, hobbies, different thoughts, different likes in music, stuff like that. So when you're talking about some 80-something-year-old guy, mid-80s guy, representing my country, it does not feel good. And I feel like I'm spending way too much time talking about this because it sounds so just common sense, But so that's the biggest problem. Conservative diehards, everyone on either side of the aisle exaggerates like crazy about the other guy. But so like conservatives will say, "Oh, Biden's the worst president ever, and he's so bad," and it's like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Like, I mean, I guess some of these people can look and point to specific policies and point to things that Biden has spearheaded that they disagree with. I'm sure there's some, but I feel like most people, it's just like there's no substance behind them saying that. I'm not defending Biden. He's just a very boring, basic, uninteresting politics guy who isn't on Twitter all the time, being loud on social media, being obnoxious. Like he kind of stays out of the limelight a lot of the time and just does whatever he's supposed to do. That's my feeling on it. You know what I mean? So like I completely don't understand the whole like, oh, he's the worst president ever. That makes no sense to me. However, stand by as I flip the coin to the other side. I might sound like a hypocrite. And I feel like the people who, whenever someone is extremely loud and confident about voicing their opinions on certain things like this, like politics and like, oh, I'm going to talk about like, oh, Hillary Clinton's so terrible, let me tell you everything. It's like, what the fuck do you know, man? Like, you're sitting at home. I understand we're in the age of information where everything is, more connected than ever, but it's also the age of disinformation and spreading random rumors. And it's like, we only know so little about what actually happens and what these people actually are like, So obviously, if you're conservative, you're going to just demonize the hell out of Hillary Clinton or whatever. But the reality is you don't know. Like, the stuff is probably, you were already primed to not like her because she's on the wrong side of the aisle. And then you probably listened to some conservative pundit tell you a bunch of things. And, maybe he's telling you the truth. Maybe he's telling you what you want to hear or what he wants you to hear. It's just, you have to kind of accept when you're not there. There's a lot of things we just do not know. Again, maybe there's concrete examples that some people can give, like, here's exactly why I don't like Hillary, But, and I don't know why I'm using Hillary, because I guess she's just extremely universally despised by the conservatives. But, like, I just don't think they know anything. But it feels so powerful to be so confident in knowing that, like, I know everything there is to know, and I think this person is terrible. And I guess, like, that is politics in a nutshell, is, like, feeling strongly about stuff. But, like, dude, you don't know. Like, people don't know. And I feel like I keep meaning to say this, and I'm like stumbling over my words. Like, the more confidently they think they know, that's like a reflection of how stupid they are. Like, this is the issue. It's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger effect thing. Like, the more confident you are that you're correct and you know everything, the more likely it is that you're just not being open-minded and considering other possibilities. Now, of course, not everyone that's confident is wrong, but that tends to be how it goes. People that are really stiff and loud and confident and stiff in their positions they tend to be stupid. And I don't think there's necessarily an objective measure of this stupid that I'm saying now, but, like, yeah. All right, so I'll see if I can catch my train of thought. What was I talking about? Right, well, I don't know. Let's review the other guy. And I have to make sure I don't spend an hour talking about Trump, but holy crap, this guy is a disaster. Like, when they say worst president ever, again, here's the thing. I don't know because I don't study history that closely. There's probably been some very bad presidents going back, 100 years and more. And I just don't know enough history to comment on that. Obviously, they were different times. But, like, modernly speaking, as far as someone who's just obnoxious and unpresidential and just terrible, just the most terrible image, that would be Trump. And yeah, I can see that. And I don't, this isn't like speculation. Here's the thing. I'm going to sound like a hypocrite saying this, what I just said, right? But when I say that I think Trump is terrible, that's not me speculating about stuff I don't know. That's me, unfortunately, having 5 years, that's his 4 years in office and 1 year that he was running, 5 years of listening to him just lie and say absolutely atrocious drivel and just be extremely unprofessional, crass, and just terrible, just like a terrible person to represent anything, to represent our country, So that's the number one thing. And so I guess if you were more objective minded, you would say, okay, yeah, and there's people like this that say, oh, yeah, Trump, I don't really like his mannerisms. I think he's kind of rude and brash. However, I really like, his positions on policies or how much stuff he gets done. And it's like, maybe I'm a little bit blind to this, but I don't see him getting very much good stuff done. Like, obviously, if you're, if the most important thing to you is getting conservative justices appointed to the Supreme Court, then that's very clearly something you can point to and say, yes, he definitely did that. That's pretty concrete. But for the most part, again, this is one of those, like, you think you know more than you know. And most people do not know jack shit. And so, like, what good stuff has Trump done? I don't know. Make me a list. But I almost guarantee most people's lists will be like, it would just be full of like really ignorant things where they think things are a certain way. Like, there's just millions of rapists and murderers crossing the southern border, and we're being invaded. And if you honestly believe that, like in that narrative, in those words, then of course you're gonna building on top of that, you're gonna believe all kinds of bullshit more from that. But like, again, that's not very accurate and not very that would be like a conservative / Trumpism exaggeration, that specific example. So it's just a matter of like what you build up upon. So yeah, that's my biggest gripe with Trump is he's so unlikable. He's such like a just like a bully, just like a unprofessional, brash, aggressive, immature bully. It's like you have, and here's the other thing, right? I already kind of touched on this, but you think, okay, that's his mannerisms, but at least he's like a good politician, or he's good at his job. No, he doesn't know he doesn't have no fucking clue what he's doing. I don't think he ever intended to win. Like, it seemed like for sure he thought he was going to lose to Hillary, and then it was like, oh shit, we won. He's like, okay, now I got to figure out how to do this whole president thing. And then he's been not really figuring that out so well. I mean, I think that's one mentality of why people like him is they're like, okay, well, this isn't like a career politician. This is a businessman. We're going to have like a different approach instead of like these politicians that always, do political stuff and become corrupt or whatever. We're going to just take a businessman and put him in, and he's going to do things differently. And I kind of see the logic in that. But I think I think what we have seen is that does not work, at least not in the case of this guy. So, how he, this was all kind of out publicly on display, and all of it was embarrassing. It was like 4, 5, you might say, embarrassing years where like he would either appoint people to be his advisors or whatever that have no idea what they're really doing, like his son-in-law or whatever. Or he would appoint people that do know what they're doing, and then occasionally they would like push back on him and be like, no, sir, this isn't a good idea. That makes no sense. And then he would just get rid of those people, right? It's weird. He was almost like this really egocentric, childish dictator that just wants his way. Like, what's important to him is loyalty to him. It's not doing a good job, or like he has his idea of how things should be, whether they're right or wrong, and the most important thing is loyalty to him and just following along. And if you don't follow along and you try to advise him otherwise, then he fires you and gets rid of you. So now if he wins, I'm guessing he's going to try to appoint all people that are, their priority is loyalty, right? And you can kind of see how like this could really do a lot of damage. Like you could already point to things that you could say that have been damaged under 4 years of Trump, and where we had like undoing good things and then setbacks and yeah, so yeah, things would be pretty bad, I guess, if you got a bunch of yes men that always agreed with him. And he's been threatening in recent times that, yeah, if I win, there's going to be retribution and stuff like that. Yeah, it's really bad. Oh, and the other thing I kind of touched on this is it just seems like he seems like a petulant teenager or preteen, someone who's extremely immature, that's like stuck in an 80-year-old's body. It's like someone that's never had to mentally mature, or at the very least, it's someone who's never had to take no for an answer. It's really wild to me that conservatives seem to have this trend where they latch onto these leaders, these conservative leaders that are nothing like them. So if you're like a tough working man or whatever, right, and you're latching onto Trump, and his origins are absolutely nothing like that. It's someone who came from money, whose family was already wealthy, who was a millionaire. He's always been the boss. He's always been in good positions of power. Oh, he had to pull himself up by the bootstraps and start by himself at the bottom, just with a small loan of $1 million, no big deal, or whatever all that is. Give me a break. This guy has just no clue. When you're dealing with ultra rich people like this that are super established early on in their families, they have no clue what it's like to be the common man, and they just lack empathy for common people. Like it's just so crazy to me that people that are like conservative, lower class, working, blue collar type people or whatever, when they somehow see these people as leaders, when it's really like these kinds of people in power are just using them. It looks so clear to me. And I guess just the main thing of it is that I've already said this, but I guess I want to reiterate just how unlikable like Trump is to me. Like to me, pretty much every time he speaks, it is so grating. Like and it was 5 years of just a media shitstorm once he was running and once he was in the presidency. It was just nonstop. He was in the news nonstop. You know what I mean? Not like more so than any other president. It was always like, oh my God, I can't believe he said this, or I can't believe he did this stupid thing. I can't, like, what is he doing now? It's like someone that needs constant attention and validation in a very childish, weird way. Like really terrible. But like specifically when he speaks, to me, it is so, how do I put this? Whenever he speaks, it sounds so patronizing. Just the way he speaks, the little mannerisms he uses, his tone of voice, the way he repeats things, like, oh, trust me, the best people, everyone knows this, the best people, the very best people. And I'm just like thinking, this kind of speech, like, who does it appeal to? It just seems like it would appeal to like really stupid people that are like, yeah, he's speaking my language. Like he's speaking, I don't understand it. And again, now I just want to like draw this back to like the big picture. And there are so many issues with democracy, and I feel like we're seeing this on full display right now. Like, the movie Idiocracy, I don't remember what year it came out, 2005 maybe or something like that. It's one of my favorite movies. I think it's really funny and a really interesting commentary. Basically, it's a comedy, but it's also like a commentary on many political and other institutional issues and stuff. And, it's not supposed to become reality. And it's frightening how close we are to a lot of the things in that movie just becoming reality, like unironically. And it really shouldn't be this way. And so what it really points to is, and I don't have like answers or good alternatives, but it points to that democracy becomes this really awful game where the people are fucking stupid. And so the game is to manipulate the people in a weird kind of popularity contest so that they elect you. And that's it. And there's a lot of, quotes about democracy, but one of my favorite is a Winston Churchill quote that says, I believe it's the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. And that's so true. Like that's so absolutely painfully true. And it goes from the little things to the big things. Like, how about any time you hear a blurb on the news, whether that's on, radio, TV, whatever, anywhere you hear the news, and they'll like interview somebody, like, what do you think about this issue, about Trump or Biden or gas prices, and they're just like, people just have so little clue what they're talking about. Or maybe they just only specifically put the microphone in front of stupid people. Because it's like whatever they say, like, let me tell you about gas prices, let me tell you about the economy, And here's the thing, when they're debating, like when there's like a live debate on, they also talk about these talking points as if they're not connected as directly as you think. Like gas prices. Oh, let me tell you, these gas prices are terrible. Who's in power? Biden? Oh my God, I hate Biden. Can you believe how high these gas prices are? It's like the president doesn't set the fucking gas prices, dude. But people speak about it in such simple terms that I'm sure they believe that it is that simple, that the president does set the gas. I mean, he doesn't set them, but like very easily influences the gas prices. Like obviously there is some influence with policy and with all kinds of things, but the reality is that situation is so complicated to like the whole, economy surrounding gas and oil and how all the prices are set. No, it's a way complicated issue. I'm getting way too specific about any one thing, but like basically any one thing you ask, anytime I hear an interview with some common person speaking, they sound so absolutely clueless. And I'm thinking, okay, so what you got to do is you got to manipulate a bunch of people like this into thinking that you have the answers, and they vote for you, and then you do whatever the fuck you want once you're in power. Most promises that are made on the campaign trail, they generally speaking don't get carried out. A lot of them are like impractical, impossible, whatever. Sometimes they do, obviously, but very rare. Like a person will make just dozens of very highfalutin, large promises on their, while they're campaigning, and it's just look it up yourself. Try to look at the track record. Very rarely does shit get done. Obviously, because for a lot of factors, because it's just not that easy to single-handedly get shit done. There's a whole, you got to go work with Congress. It's difficult, but they'll act like it's very simple, and I guess the other thing is whenever something good happens during the term when you were in office, you're going to take credit for that, be like, oh yeah, I did that, it was good under me. And whenever something bad happens that was not under your control whatsoever, you're going to blame the people that were in office. Like, oh, COVID and all that stuff happened with that. It's like, okay, well, if you remove any kind of super deep conspiracy theories, I don't think whoever the sitting president was when that started, it wasn't like their fault. Now, obviously, some of their way they reacted to it and the things they said and the policies they sort of commandeered, you could see as good or bad or inappropriate or appropriate or whatever. And obviously that makes a difference. But you know what I mean? Like, it's not good to blame the big overarching problem immediately on as if they caused it, the person that was in the presidential office, for example. And likewise, what's something else? Like, man, I did not like Bush, right? George W. Bush Jr. or whatever. But again, unless you're very deep in the conspiracy theory, you're not going to blame him for 9/11 happening. Like some ways down the line, you can find flaws in the system that kind of maybe allowed it to happen. But like generally speaking, I don't think Bush like orchestrated and easily allowed that to happen. So it's very silly to just blame the initial thing on him. But there's always that connection, right? Because that was the guy that was in power when it happened. So, and it's funny now thinking back on George W. Bush, like how he was such a terrible president for so many reasons. But now it's like, if he was running right now as a third candidate, it would be pretty, it would be pretty stupid, because then there'd be 3 stupid candidates, but he would be by far the best choice between him and Biden and Trump. And that's ridiculous. That's terrifying. So yeah, I guess I should briefly touch about the debate that just happened. It was a disaster. Like, I feel like pretty much every debate I've seen was, I shouldn't say every debate, but a lot of them, the ones that we remember, are really embarrassing. Like they're embarrassing for our country to see just how they play out. And the reason, well, there's a lot of reasons the previous ones recently were embarrassing. Primarily because they had Trump and Biden, you could say, although Biden was more coherent at least. But one thing is, it was just like it was like a Jerry Springer episode, and mostly that's Trump's fault, of course, because they were just bickering and talking and yelling over each other, and it was super unproductive. So that was embarrassing. So I will say the only positive thing about the debate that just happened is that it was quite orderly the way it was put on. Both sides didn't do too much talking over each other. There wasn't too much screaming or anything. It was orderly, and I think that is a good thing. However, the reason it's embarrassing is because we have these two absolute turds to choose from that the majority of people, and I don't know what that majority is, at least 60% or something, do not want this. They do not want to choose between this turd or that turd. Like, that is so bad. But yeah, basically Biden has lost. Like, there's just no possible way he can win. He was terrible, by which I mean he became the caricature that how he is portrayed. He is occasionally portrayed as this helpless, bumbling old man that can barely walk and string two words together. And yeah, he was that, basically. He started really bad. He ended maybe a little bit less bad, but still bad. And so the impression he made was terrible. And so however you measure who won, right, which is a little bit subjective, Donald Trump definitely won. He definitely won. And to his credit, he sounded the most put together and presidential than I've ever heard him sound before, which is not an endorsement of him. Basically, just about anyone that could keep themselves reasonably composed would have looked good next to Biden, who was just mumbling. He had like scripts in his head for how to answer things with, mostly kind of BS reasons. And he would just like randomly, like sometimes be on topic and sometimes devolve into other things. And then the script started like, it was like an AI bot putting together text, and it doesn't quite make sense, and it's overlapping from one topic to the other. And then he sometimes would just get lost in his words and mumble them together. But Trump was pretty well put together. And I think the main reason about that is he just didn't sling too many insults, and he didn't get into a yelling match or interrupting match. And it's funny because that stuff before that we associate with Trump, being like brash and screaming and cutting people off, those are bad things. Those do not do him favors, generally speaking. And all he had to do is be a little more composed, and suddenly he's way more presidential and way more presentable. And but his major thing, right? So, because so far it sounds like I'm saying Trump did good. He just stood there and fucking lied. Like, which is, of course, that's just how he does, and most politicians do, but he is like the expert of that. I don't want to say that everything he said was a lie, but wow, what was that? But it was just lies and exaggerations, and it's people setting off fireworks because the 4th of July is in, I don't know, next week. So yeah, so we had an old man falling asleep, sounding like he accidentally wandered out of a dementia care facility. And then we had a guy standing there brashly lying, but he did so in a very composed way. And he almost by default looked good compared to Biden. And so, this strikes on an important point, and I've been meaning to maybe at some point make a whole little video about this, talking about this. But I may as well drop at least the preview of it here. And this is something I learned a long time ago. And oddly enough, it's something I learned from leading TF2 teams, like toward the beginning of my career, if you want to call it that, of leading teams and playing competitive TF2. Basically, how you say something, and this applies to all of like life and everything. Like, how you say something is as important, if not more important, than what you say. And so maybe Biden was technically on the good side of things, at least from my perspective. But he said things so badly that the most important thing people notice is this is a dementia-riddled old man that's like on the edge of losing his mind and falling asleep and whatever, So it doesn't matter what he said. Whereas Trump said a bunch of lies and a bunch of just exaggerations and some really callous shit about immigrants that's just way over the top. That's borderline like approaching hate speech kind of stuff. But he said it in a composed manner. So that's what people are going to remember. That layer of how you are perceived sits above the layer of what you're actually saying being good or true or whatever. So just on those merits, like the debate isn't just about who says the better, more correct truth. Obviously, that's an element to it. But no, unfortunately, the human reality is that it's how we perceive people. It matters that you come off competent, put together, presidential, you say the right things. You're able to converse, answer, reply, retort, stuff like that, right? So So anyway, Biden did absolutely terrible, and he lost. There's no recovering from this. I swear, like, I don't know. I'm gonna eat my hat if somehow Biden wins this election. I don't know what that says. I guess I do know what that says. I guess that says people are going to be, biting into the shit sandwich and doing strategic voting on a level that has never been done before. But I don't think that's going to happen because there are a lot of conservatives that, for some reason, put all their stock into Trump. Some people playing basketball across the field. I think Trump has a decent amount of support, even though he's also widely unliked. And, I was going to say toward the end of my video before, because it was going to be before the debate, I was going to say something like, well, if the choice is between, a sleepy, boring old man who there's not much to say about him versus, an almost as old man with like a young teenager's mind, the choice is pretty easy. It's sleepy old man. But I can't say that anymore because it's not just a sleepy old man. It's like I've already said many times, he is on the cusp of being absolutely mentally unfit to be in this extremely serious, powerful position, one of the most powerful in the world, you could say, president of the United States. So at this point, I don't know what to do. Now I'm still a Democrat. I'm still going to largely vote on the Democratic ticket because my values align better with that. But as far as voting for president, if it comes down to these two turds, it's like, I don't think I'm going to vote for anybody, or I'm going to write in just, I don't know what I'm going to write in. I don't think I'll put Mickey Mouse, but you can put, put someone like I don't know, some Democrat that isn't even running, like Pete Buttigieg or something. And again, that's not an endorsement of him, but just like anyone would be better than Biden, or any other Democrat, or even Nikki Haley or something. Which I don't agree with her. She's conservative. I tend not to agree with a lot of her policies, but she's younger. She's like vibrant. She's well put together. Oh my God, she's so much better than either of these two turds. It's not even funny. So, but it's more important, you could argue, what happens at the lower level at, Congress and state and city and local stuff, right? Like, that's where a lot of the important things get done. Not everything. Obviously, there's big ticket items like, abortion and stuff like that matter at the top. But, nothing here changes my politics, but, oh man, is this a disaster. And yeah, and I think I've said everything there is to say. I'm just trying to think if there's anything I forgot. I guess, I wish there were other options. There's never been a viable third party once the two became super established. Republicans and Democrats became established. But, you have someone like RFK running, and I sure wish there was a reasonable person to vote for, but he's not. I really don't agree with a lot of the things he's going for. But you know what's even more important? His voice, he just sounds like he's barely talking and like he's dying. And I know that, again, that sounds like such a shallow thing to hold against him, but he just does not sound good. He does not sound presentable. And yes, it's shallow, but that's it. He's disqualified, basically. It feels like he's unfit. But also, I don't agree with a lot of things he says, so I don't think he would be a good choice in many ways. So this is the problem with having a third party guy, that, you want to morally vote with what you actually believe in versus strategic voting. But all it ever does is empowers one of the two established parties, right? So, a bunch of people might vote for RFK, and what it's going to do is, I don't know if those people are going to be more the conservative people or the liberal people that are going to do it, but let's just say it's the liberal people. That's just going to take more votes away from Biden, which is going to just more likely guarantee that Trump wins. Or vice versa, the other way. Whatever it is, it's just going to guarantee that one of the two turds wins, which is the outcome anyway, right? One of those two guys is going to win, assuming that they are the ones that. I mean, realistically, they're talking now about maybe replacing Biden. They should. They really should. I don't have. I'm not, again, super political. I don't have good recommendations for who to put in. Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg or whatever. There's options. There's been some good candidates in the past. In the past election, what was the guy's name? I forget, the Asian dude. There's been some decent Democratic candidates. It doesn't mean you have to agree with absolutely everything they say, but oh man, do I wish there were some other options. So yes, if Biden gets replaced, then almost certainly I'll be voting for whatever that replacement is. But the Democrats really fucked up. Like, they really walked themselves, for any number of reasons now, they have committed to Biden. And this was a mistake, because really there's been signs that this guy's too old to go for a second term, and he should have just given up his power and passed it on. And we could have had a fresh Democrat at the very least to be running against Trump. But yeah, this is a disaster. I think I've probably said everything I wanted to say and probably repeated everything 3 times over. So I'll just cut it off here. I guess if I think of something I forgot, then I'll type it into the description or a comment in the video or whatever. So yeah, if for some reason this interested you enough to watch or listen to this long-ass thing, then thank you for listening, and have a good one.